Okay. Welcome everyone. Good morning. If you're on the West Coast, good afternoon. If you're on the East Coast or somewhere in between, late morning. And later afternoon if you're our friends over in Europe. So it is so wonderful to have you all this morning. I'm so excited for our coffee chat with some incredible admissions experts this morning. And we just get to really dive into MBA admissions, learn a little bit more about the process, um, what they're looking for, and how to best prepare for the admission cycle. So, welcome. Today, we are going to have a dynamic conversation with you. So, if you would like to ask specific questions, please submit them. Please use the Q&A function because the chat won't be visible, but we're happy to answer your questions. If we don't get to them, like while we're having our conversation, we will have some time set aside at the end to answer questions as well. And if you miss something, don't worry, we'll share the recording. If you want to share with your student or other students or anyone else, you can share the recording as well. So, we are going to share a poll with you right now, just so that we get a feel of who you are, what our audience is like, how we can best serve you today. So please take a minute to fill out that poll. And that should be popping up about now. My name is Carley Nuzzo. I am the director of Undergraduate Mentorship, also known as College Success more recently, and graduate admissions at ESM Prep. What that means is that I work with all of our post-high school students. So I work with a lot of our college students and all of our graduate applicants. So I'm really excited today to have two incredible panelists with me, and we are just going to go over some of your questions. So today I have my colleague, Amy, who is an ESM Prep counselor and also a former Stanford GSP reader, and Jessica Keating, who's director of MBA admissions at NYU Stern. So please, as I was saying, please feel free to add any questions, and we'll be happy to engage with you throughout the conversation today. Okay, so let's get started. Amy and Jessica, thank you again so much for being here today. I know that a lot of our families with ESM are either high school students or just recently in college. So my first question that I'm going to pose for you is, what would your advice be for college students who know or think that they might want to pursue an MBA in the future? What should they be focusing on in college?
I'm happy to start, Carly.
That'd be
I think
great.
one, great to meet everyone. Thanks so much for taking the time to tune in today. Happy to answer your questions. But I think one really neat thing about being in college and thinking ahead to the MBA is that you have a lot of control over kind of your situation right now. So I feel like we see a lot of applicants down the road who are a couple of years out of their undergraduate degree and they can't go back and change their GPA, right? Or they can't change the courses that they took or internships and stuff. So I think thinking ahead is a really great advantage. And I think number one is really making sure that you're focusing on kind of your studies and your classes. That GPA will stick with you. It's not something that you can go back and edit later on. And I think sometimes that gets lost. You're in the college moment, you're doing all the things. And you're not thinking about, 5 years down the road when you may be applying to school. So I think taking advantage and really focusing on your studies is a really big thing because that GPA will carry with you.
Awesome. So the GPA is a big deal. What about, so you brought up specific classes.
Mhm.
What about majors, certain classes? Are there certain things in the
Yeah.
curriculum that you're looking for from students?
Yeah. So I'll say I'm talking specifically, I guess, about our full-time MBA program, which
Hmm.
most students are coming in with about roughly 5 years of work experience. So just kind of keep that context in mind. But I think thinking about the major is important, but we do see folks with a variety of different backgrounds. So I don't want anybody feeling like, okay, I have to be, a business major and that's the only way I'm going to get into business school. Not the case. We actually value a wide variety of different backgrounds and a lot can be applied to the MBA. So I don't want anybody to feel like they need to, be a business major and that's the only way to get in. We see a lot of different undergraduate majors applying to business school and being successful. I think the other thing which we didn't really talk about as much is kind of the club involvement and internship. So like be thoughtful about where you want to go, but we also understand a lot can change between now and when you may be applying. But get involved. I think we really like to see that as an undergraduate student. What are you passionate about? Where did you take leadership opportunities? And that's something we would encourage you to continue on in your professional work experience as well. Enjoy the employee resource group. Think about where you can take leadership roles professionally, because we'd like to see that trend for a successful applicant. But yeah, it's really great that you're here early. I feel like you have a lot of kind of agency and how you want to move forward with an application later on. I just think being mindful now of what may come up later is really important.
Mhm.
I think that's so great. Amy was talking a lot about leadership and having a through line in your leadership. I don't know if you want to speak more to that, Amy.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. How you lead is, especially at the GSB, a really big component of what they look for in an applicant. And the GSB really likes to drill down on what kind of impact you've made in the activities that you've been involved in. So it's not really just being involved in a lot of things. It's more like how you are engaging. Like, are you taking every opportunity to make positive change, collaborate with others, kind of help others up along, driving results in your participation. So it's a really great sort of low risk training ground to kind of get in there and test your leadership skills. And it's a good opportunity to take a few risks, to try some things out. There's no set kind of extracurricular experience that they're looking for. It's really just what is meaningful to you, because chances are you are going to make a stronger impact in something that you really care about. And that kind of translates into your work experience. And when you're writing your application, everything sort of hangs together and it gives you a really strong opportunity to demonstrate who you are and what potential you have. Because the GSB specifically believes that past leadership experience kind of predicts future success. So any opportunity you can to build that experience is great. And I'll also add on academic preparation because the GSB, specifically all business schools, are quantitative programs. Beyond just the GPA, MBA programs like to see that you can handle the quantitative rigor of their curriculum. So taking classes like calculus, stats, micro and macroeconomics, even if you aren't a business major or an economics major, can really help demonstrate that you're prepared for the quantitative rigor of the curriculum.
And how do you weigh that with, so say we are talking to applicants that are a few years out of undergrad, how do you weigh that versus the test scores? So the GRE and the GMAT. One, I know a lot of students are concerned about whether or not like you have a preference between the two, but then also how much can that quant score um, outweigh or balance out that quantitative background in general?
Yeah, and I think the quant score is can be very affirming. And when you're looking at, the quant versus the verbal score isn't quite as important, more so for students, international students whose first language may not be English. The quantitative score is, for someone who was, say, an English major, for example, and took a few quantitative classes outside of their regular curriculum, but brought a really strong quant score, that gives the admissions team more confidence that that student will be able to succeed in the academic program.
I'd agree. I think the only thing I would add there, Carly, is at least at Stern and in most business schools, it's a very holistic process. So we're really looking at everything that you're submitting when reviewing as a committee. So that means the undergraduate transcript and the GPA. It means the test score. It means the essays, letters of rec, all that. So all of it sort of plays together in making the ultimate decision about a candidate. I think the other thing to sort of keep in mind is that there's a lot happening with different tests and test scores. I think a lot of schools, some may accept a waiver, they may accept other tests. Like, for example, we also accept other professional exams in the EA. There may be kind of other opportunities to apply. So I think for us, we really want students to find the test that they feel most confident in and really showcases their skills best. So that involves some exploration on the applicant part ahead of time to try out the different tests and make a selection there. We review them all the same. So to answer your question about like GMAT versus GRE, everything is sort of reviewed the same. So it's really up to you what you think will be the best reflection for you as a candidate. I think the other thing to keep in mind that we get a lot of questions about is like retaking the exam. That's something that is not a ding on an application. We actually think it really shows a commitment to the process. So if you've retaken the exam a few times and have improved, that's something that we would look favorably upon, and we'd look at the highest score. So yeah, just a couple other things to add on the test score front.
I love that. That's really, I'm sure that makes a lot of our, a lot of applicants feel much better about the process. That's great. And then how about after college or even in college when you're looking for certain positions, entry level positions, kind of those jobs, those roles that will fill the 5 years? I know that we talked about, um, you know, that it's more about like what you're passionate about. Are there certain positions that, so I have had students in the past that work for family businesses. Are there certain industries? How does a student, are there any red flags in there? How does a student really like position themselves in a way that will be competitive for MBA admissions?
Yeah, and I think that a lot of students think they have to be investment bankers or management consultants in order
Yes.
to get a place at a top MBA program, which is not the case at all, because it wouldn't be as compelling and as strong and as diverse of a program if the class was completely filled with investment bankers and management consultants. Like we really want to bring diverse perspectives, and that could come from anywhere. And I think just like when we advise people on thinking about where to go to college, it's kind
Yep.
of similar with finding your first job out of college. You want to pick something where you are going to thrive, where you are going to be your best, where you are going to be set up to make the strongest possible impact in your role. That might not be at an investment bank. That might be somewhere else. And just because it's not in, one of those types of programs, that doesn't mean its experience is less valued. So,
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Amy. I was
Yeah,
going to say, Jessica, do you have anything to add to that?
sure. Yeah, I think definitely agree. I think we're definitely interested in seeing a variety of different backgrounds. So don't feel too pigeonholed into kind of the traditional pre-MBA careers. I think the other thing to keep in mind is how you're conveying that work experience in an application. So think about the resume or who you're having writing your letter of recommendation as an example. I think for us on the resume front, really showcasing quantifiable impact in your roles is something that we're really looking for. So, not just kind of a laundry list of your responsibilities, but what is the impact that you've made in your particular role? Whether it's the most junior role or an intern role, whatever it is, we want to see how you've impacted the organization and the work that's being done there. And anywhere that you can quantify that, I think takes it to the next level. So, that's some kind of tips, I guess, if you're thinking about your resume. We don't have a traditional or like a very specific resume format, so any sort of professional resume will do, but I think it's something to think about. You also mentioned kind of at the front family businesses and maybe unique work experiences. I think if your circumstance is one of those scenarios where you think it requires a little bit more explanation for the admission committee, like I would think about maybe adding a descriptor about the company or giving some more information on the size or kind of your role there. if you can't have your, boss write you the letter of recommendation because it's a family business, like just giving us some insight on why you chose somebody else. We have lots of areas in the application for you to answer those questions. And we also have an optional essay section where you can include some information if that's necessary. But I think generally, like, there's always exceptions to the rule, right? And there may be circumstances that are unique in your case. And I wouldn't discourage anybody from kind of applying for those reasons. There's usually, a way to share that with the admission committee so we know what's going on and can get more context.
Awesome. We have a question that came in that kind of fits into that. So I'm going to read it to
Sure.
you guys. Many of us come from non-traditional or highly technical backgrounds, including clinical roles, and are using an MBA to pivot into leadership, strategy, or impact-driven careers. From your perspective, what differentiates those who make that transition especially well during and after the MBA beyond strong credentials on paper?
Sure. So there's a lot there. I want to make sure I'm covering or answering the
Yeah.
question at hand. But I appreciate your question. I think I just kind of revisit the fact that we are looking at a diverse group of students. We're not looking at a cookie cutter like pre-MBA candidate. We also expect that people are coming to the MBA to grow their leadership skills, to pivot into roles. So that's the common trajectory, although, many people may be looking to advance, but a lot of people, and if not most, are looking to pivot, industry roles and stuff. So I don't want you to feel like super, you know, intimidated by that fact. We have a lot of people coming in with the same sort of scenario. I think it's how do you tell your story, right? And unfortunately or unfortunately, the first way you're doing that is on paper, right? Before we're even meeting with candidates for interview, it is the paper, virtual or screen application, if you will. So I think it's how you're kind of packaging your experience, including that impact or including kind of ways that you've kind of grown in your work experience. And I think then in your essays and in interviews, you're going to talk a little bit more about kind of how you're planning to get from point A to point B and how the MBA program that you're applying to will help you get there. So I think it's that storytelling and being kind of mindful of like where you've been, what you're looking to gain, maybe where some of your skill sets. Maybe you need to grow in some areas or some things that are going to be more transferable. I think all of that's going to be really helpful in packaging your application.
Absolutely. I love that when I'm working with graduate students in general, but MBA applicants as well. Really like setting up that narrative of how you've gotten to where you're at, where the gaps are, and how the program will fill those gaps and how you'll contribute there is really important. Speaking of, you did talk about like transitioning and changing. How how much do you weigh? Is it a red flag when an applicant wants to change industries or is going in for a career change? How much career clarity do you want an applicant to have versus flexibility dependent on their growth in the program? How should an applicant balance those two things?
Yeah, and I would say that I have experience at two MBA programs. I went to the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth, and I worked for the admissions team at Stanford GSB. And Tuck really wanted you, at least at the time, I'm not exactly sure what they're talking about now, really wanted you to have very clear goals. I'm going to an MBA to make a career transition. This is what I need to do to get this job that I want after. Whereas the GSB really wants to give students the opportunity to come and explore and learn from everyone on campus, whether it's the faculty or the students, and think big and open their minds and leave the possibility open for change. So interested in Jessica's perspective because I found two very different
Yeah, I
ways
kind
of
of feel like we straddle both, which is interesting. So I think when we're reviewing like the application, I think seeing very clear goals is very helpful. I think that may include a stepping stone role or a plan B, for lack of a better term. And I think that's something that you could be upfront about. I think we're looking more for like understanding of industry feasibility of this pivot. Like, do they understand like if they're here going there, like how many
Yeah.
is that feasible? how are they planning to do that? Is there kind of a stepping stone role in the interim that they would consider in order to get to that goal? Um, but I think to your point, Amy, nobody's knocking down the door at graduation saying, oh, well, you said you were doing this in your
Right.
application. Like, we definitely expect people to explore. There's going to be so many opportunities that are right in front of you during the program. And we expect people to explore and things change. I think the biggest thing I'm thinking from my careers team, like with their perspective, it's always talking about like how many pivots or how significant the pivot is. So they talk a lot about like industry, function, and geographic moves. So the more moves in those three areas you want to make, the more challenging it may be. I think also with the ever-changing, landscape out there for recruiting, being mindful of like other ways to get, alternative pathways in order to get to your future goals. So, you're interested in tech, but maybe big tech's not for you. There's tech roles in every single industry now. Like, how can you get that functional experience in order to get to the next role? So, I guess we certainly value like the open-mindedness and flexibility, but from an application standpoint, I would say put your best foot forward with like a clear plan A, and
Mhm.
then flexibility can come into play after that.
Yeah,
If that
to
makes sense.
make sure
Yeah.
that you show that you've thought things through
Yes,
Right,
and are
exactly.
realistic, have a plan going forward. Yeah, I love that.
Exactly.
because it is a
Um,
big investment. An MBA is a big
No,
investment, and want to make sure that the students understand that
and are
and
prepared to
have
take
thought it
that on.
through and are
Yeah.
prepared. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So we have a question that is relatively connected. So I'm going to read that. And I think that it's important because we do have a lot of applicants coming through that are considering their own startups, and positioning that for applications is there is definitely a narrative to build there. So here's a question. When comparing MBA applicants who want to use the MBA to start or grow their own startup with other applicants, ooh, I like that, with other applicants, are there specific things they should highlight in their CV or references? For example, should they demonstrate particular entrepreneurial skills or experiences?
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a very good Stanford GSB question because we get a lot of applicants who come to the GSB wanting to start up, and they have a program called Startup Garage, and there's a lot of people with entrepreneurial mindsets. So if I were reading an application from someone who is looking for that, I would look for evidence in their application of innovation, of bringing new thinking, of and a track record of the leadership skills required to actually make it successful. So not just, entrepreneurial endeavors, but evidence of, collaboration and engaging others, of helping bring others up and train them and help them get them on board to your vision, of driving results, beyond just that innovative thinking. Like, do you have the full set of leadership skills to make it successful? And I would say that kind of goes for coming from any industry. If you're making a career switch, if you want to get into something new, if you're an entrepreneur, that's so foundational at the GSB to show that evidence in whatever it is you do. Whether it's related or unrelated, that will help you succeed in the program, and that's the kind of evidence they will look for.
Okay, great. Yes. I think that was really thorough. If you have more questions about startups and entrepreneurship, but I think really showing that you are a dreamer, but you can substantiate that and have results is really important. Um, Thank you so much, Amy. Okay, so we have so many questions. This is great. Um, Okay, I think that we answered this one, or in a way answered this one, but one of our participants asked, I have 9 years experience split between corporate supply chain and my own family farm. Does the committee value this kind of non-traditional background?
Yes. I feel like we're all nodding
Yes,
our head.
yes.
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 Yes. Okay, awesome. And then this one just came through. For college admissions, extracurriculars are very important. What about for business school applications? Should those in their early years in the workplace also be taking on significant extracurriculars outside of work to bolster their leadership, pursue passions, and achieve impact? Or will schools be looking more at what they've achieved in the workplace?
So I think it's a little bit of everything,
The
right? I think
balance.
it's like, yeah, it's a balance. I think we want to see what you're passionate about, going back to kind of the initial conversation here. And I think a lot of times that comes through in your outside of work volunteering or extracurricular, if you will. Um, that may happen at work as well. Like a lot of big companies have a lot of employee resource organizations or leadership opportunities kind of built in. So I think kind of involvement in those different groups, or if there is a passion outside of work that you're doing, whether it's, you know, a community service or a sport or whatever it might be. I think just seeing kind of what you're doing with your time is helpful. Doesn't mean you have to be kind of the president of every one of these organizations, but how are you spending your time, right? And where are you getting involved as a leader, whether it's unofficially or in a more official capacity. But I think seeing it both in your organizations and then kind of what you're doing outside, both can be impactful in giving us an idea of what's important to you.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, one of the GSB's essay topics is what matters most to you.
Yeah.
And they really want to understand what you genuinely care about, and what perspective you're bringing to the class. It's not just about what you did. It's about how you choose to spend your time. And, I wouldn't just load up on things that you think might look good on an application. Just like invest your time. You're busy, you're working full time. Invest that extra time in things that you generally mean something to you. And a lot of times those things are connected to either what you're doing at work or a theme that just helps tie your story together. Um,
Yeah.
so and I think admissions officers understand that if you're in investment banking or management consultancy and you travel a lot and working 100 hours a week, you probably don't have a lot of time for extracurricular activities. And that's understandable. And if that's the case, Jessica mentioned this earlier, leveraging the additional information section of the application is a good opportunity to showcase that. But yeah, who you are, what matters to you, what you value, is very important. So extracurriculars are an opportunity to showcase that. And there are, like Jessica mentioned, so many opportunities within your own within your own workplace a lot of times. So that's a good way to get involved.
Yeah, we have another question that I'm just going to like wrap into this because we kind of just talked over it is that um, these non-traditional roles or family business experience, leadership in those versus leadership in your corporate experience, both Amy and Jessica are saying that they appreciate both and they just want to see where your impact is made. And it's not necessarily that they're weighing one more heavily than the other. So. Um, okay, awesome. We are getting a lot of very specific questions for Jessica about Stern. But I was gonna I'm gonna tackle all of those once we talk about the specific application itself. So I did want to make sure that we covered everyone's questions about kind of more broad experience first. Um, let's see. Okay, so here's one. Um, when an applicant already has a graduate degree, so I know a lot of my students coming out of undergrad or preparing um, to graduate are considering master's programs. So whether that be a master's in communications or a master's in management, or maybe less related. When an applicant has a graduate degree, how is the undergraduate GPA evaluated relative to the graduate level performance? And does one carry more weight in demonstrating academic readiness for the MBA?
I would just say we're really looking at everything, anything post-secondary. So again, I think all of the work that you're doing in undergraduate as well as graduate is going to be evaluated by the committee.
And it is like I will say, if like maybe you didn't have as strong of an undergrad academic record, if you really excel in a challenging graduate program, it's an opportunity to show that, demonstrate that you do have kind of the academic chops and you've proved that, you can handle the rigor and meet the intellectual vitality requirements of the program.
Yeah, it might be a good if you are kind of in that situation where a lot of times when we're working with our high school students, maybe you're trying to show that upward trajectory
Great.
and that
Yep.
trend. It's going to be relatively the same there too. So if you're in a situation where you think your undergraduate experience is not incredibly competitive, then this might help that out as well as the test scores. Um, okay, great. We have this one. Oh, I'm currently weighing the option of a 1 year versus a 2 year MBA. What factors would you recommend taking into account? Pivoting needs, financial needs, internship work experience, etc. And I know
I think,
Jessica, NYU has
yeah.
so many different programs.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. I think you really have to kind of look at the different programs and do some self-reflection of what you're looking to get out of them, right? So we do have two focused MBAs. They're a little bit more niche and one in tech and one in luxury and retail. So those you'd have to like know that you're very committed to those industries and they are 1 year, but it's not a general MBA. I know those exist elsewhere as well. We also have a part-time MBA, an executive MBA, full-time. So there's a lot of different options. I think for folks, so say there's somebody who's interested in the tech field as an example. So they're weighing between our full-time program and the 1 year focused MBA. The focused MBA is much more lockstep in nature, less opportunity for kind of exploration. So you'd have to know that you really want to stay in that space, but maybe, and you're not getting that summer internship, but there's built-in experiential learning. So you are able to kind of get that hands-on experience. So it really depends, like how much time are you looking to take out of the workforce? Are you looking to do a bigger pivot? Are you looking to get that summer internship exploration for the recruiting process? So it really depends on kind of what you're looking to get out of it. I know we have a lot of people who are like considering part-time versus full-time in New York, and I think the recruiting is a big question there. But yeah, I mean, I think ultimately it's some self-reflection on kind of the different programs that exist and what you're really looking to gain from it.
Yeah, it goes back to what Amy was saying about, with high school students, college students, you're looking for fit, what your goals are, and how that program will help you get to those goals. So, I did want to ask while we're on this note about the deferred enrollment. So, Amy, we talked about college seniors applying for deferred enrollment. What Obviously they don't have full-time job experience. What are you looking for when you're reading those applications?
Yeah, yeah. And the deferred enrollment is round three of the 3 rounds of admissions at the GSB, and it is primarily targeted towards college seniors. And it's a very, very competitive program. So we really look, since those college seniors haven't had a lot of work experience yet. We put more emphasis on the academics and the extracurriculars and if they've had internships. And we look at the same things, really evidence of leadership, and it does come a little bit more from extracurriculars. Um, and then also if they have letters of recommendation from internships, they can sometimes be very compelling. I had a student who had an incredible letter of recommendation from an investment banking internship she had that really dove deep into her leadership skills and her impact in her role. So that's another opportunity. And yeah, it's just what kind of impact you've made on campus, given sort of the size of the campus and the kind of opportunities available. Did you really make the most of those? Take some risks, try some new things, hone in on what you're most curious about, interested in, etc. And demonstrate those same leadership skills that we would expect to see in a full-time job after college.
Thanks, Amy. So now I was going to go into some of the application components themselves and any tips that you have. I know we've kind of touched on some of that, but any tips for the resume, for essays, for those letters of recommendation, um, that students, should be focused on in the process?
Yeah, I can start with the essay and list some common mistakes that,
Yeah.
that I would see as a reader. A lot of times, students like the main essay question at the GSB may still be, I haven't looked at it recently, what matters most to you?
It
Um,
is.
and okay, good. And they really want to know what matters most to you. A lot of people will take that opportunity to regurgitate their resume or repeat things that they've already seen somewhere else in the application. And we're really looking for new evidence. So please do not repeat anything you've already told us somewhere else in the application. Use that opportunity to share something new. And then another common mistake I would see in letters of recommendation is to choose not the person who seems most important, but the person who really knows you well. I've seen letters of recommendation from senators and heads of foreign countries, and that do seem very might seem powerful, but they don't really give us a lot of good information about who you are unless that person really knows you and has worked with you and, isn't just a friend of a friend or something. I know it's very tempting to do that, but we're really looking to get new insights from those like letters of recommendations. So only someone that really has good knowledge of who you are, how you lead, how you think is going to be able to write a compelling letter.
Thank you. And speaking of those essays, we have several questions, Jessica, about the
Sure.
Pick Six essay. So if you wanted to take a minute to talk about that. So one question specifically asked, should it be a one pager? How should I go about this? Can one PDF contain multiple pages? I know that the Pick Six is definitely something that is different and special for
Sure.
Stern.
Yeah, happy to talk a little bit about it. So the Pick Six essay is a Stern essay where we ask you to introduce yourself with images. So you introduce yourself to your future classmate and choose 6 images with brief captions. So that's kind of the prompt there. We don't give a lot of guidelines intentionally, like you're really able to be creative here. So certainly you could do a slide deck, you could do a PDF collage, whatever it might be. It's really flexible. I think to Amy's point, we really just want to get to know who you are outside of the other aspects of your application. So not just what's already in your work experience or your resume, like who are you? What are you passionate about? I will say it's been years now since we added this essay, but when we first launched it, we did the exercise ourselves, and it was really interesting to kind of go through that process, be self-reflective. How do you want to introduce yourself to your classmates, right? So I think try to take the pressure off a little bit, have fun. It's one of our favorite parts of the application to read. It really brings an application to life. So I think kind of the biggest watch out is just repeating what's already in your application. It shouldn't just be a resume part two and images. If there's a standout achievement at work and that's really important to you, and that's fine, like don't feel like you can include something there, but I wouldn't make it kind of just a repeat of what we've already seen with your
A visual
academic.
resume.
Exactly. So, and then have fun, right? I think that's like the big takeaway. And don't overthink kind of the format and things. We see a lot of different ones come through, and they're all really great and really give us great insight into who folks are. I think the other thing we get a lot of questions about there is like, do I have to include an image of myself? No, you don't. It's totally up to you. I think the big thing there is just to make it as authentic and personalized as possible. So just avoiding being super stock imagey or like really just disconnected. Like let us get to know you, but you don't have to include pictures of yourself, and there's no like prescribed format. You can be pretty flexible with that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep,
This is another Stern specific question with the IQ and the EQ.
sure.
So a student is asking, or a participant is asking, in recent cohorts, what kind of EQ signals have made applicants stand out beyond test scores and resumes?
Sure. So emotional intelligence is really important to us in the process, and that's something that we've infused in the application. So instead of letters of recommendation, we actually have EQ endorsements, which are essentially letters of recommendation, but we have specific EQ related questions. So we're going to ask your manager or your recommender specific EQ related questions, which really helps bring that to life. So that's like a very tangible example of how we build that into the application. I think we also see that throughout the Pick Six or the essays, oftentimes there are great examples of EQ included there. And certainly, if you move forward to an interview, we'll be asking questions about EQ as well.
Speaking of interviews,
Yeah.
what role does the interview play? What can they confirm or change in the process? And how heavily are they weighed?
Yeah, so for us, it's kind of the next step in the process. They are invitation only. So it's the only way to move forward with getting that admit decision is coming in for an interview. I will say do your research because schools have all different formats and policies around interviews. So they are pretty school specific. So that's something I would encourage everybody to learn a little bit more about in their process. But for us, they are invitation only. They're all hosted by members of the admission committee. So there are folks who have already seen your application cover to cover. So for us, we're able to take the conversation to the next level a bit because we know you already. So I think for us, a big kind of tip is review what you put in your application because we're going to be diving right in our conversation. Ours right now are, virtual 30 minutes, conversational in nature, and really just to try to get to know you a little bit better. It's a great opportunity for us to ask questions we may have about the application, if there's a gap or things that we want to learn more about your communication style, whatever it might be, your goals. But I think it's also a great opportunity for you to learn a little bit more about us and ask your questions. So for us, it's kind of the next step in moving forward with the admission decision. I will say we have a very high percentage of folks who are admitted off of the interview. So getting the interview is a really great sign that we like what we see and we want to learn a little bit more.
Awesome. Um, okay, great. So with that, going from the interview, now we're kind of in this like post application phase. We have two questions about that. So first, um, the first question is from a student that or an applicant that is currently sorry. In our job, we call everyone students. I'm aware most of you are probably not. Um, a participant asked, I'm currently on the wait list for a program. While I understand specific feedback can't be given, um, do you think, like, are there any updates that this applicant should be doing? So, as far as like retaking the GRE, submitting updates, joining new programs. And then I had another question about just kind of like after submission, is there, like, for the post submission period, is there, um, do programs want you to be continuing to be engaged with Q&As online and maybe reaching out to reps, or what should that connection look like?
Sorry, my mute button was stuck there for a second. Okay, so on the wait list side, I think we also don't give specific feedback for folks on the wait list. I know some schools do, but I think it's being really kind of self-aware and self-reflective of like where you may need to improve in your application, and sometimes there might not be that much, right? Like it's a really competitive landscape. So I also like want to say like it might be about space ultimately, right? But if you feel like, okay, my test score was a little light based off of the class profile, like that's a very clear and actionable place where you can improve your candidacy potentially, like you gave that example. So that's something that might be more straightforward or clear cut. If you think you can improve, like we certainly would encourage folks to retake the exam if you feel like that's an area that is a little bit softer. Um, but yeah, it's pretty individual. Unfortunately, we're not able to give specific feedback. So I think it's a little bit of kind of that self-reflection piece and kind of where can I improve? But I think the sign is that we see a lot that we like, but maybe there's one or two areas that may be holding you back or it's a space thing, right? Um, your other question was about kind of engaging post submission. I think it's really a balance. I think like we certainly want to know that you're engaged, but I at the same time, I think being mindful of the team's time and are you really reaching out with updates or is it more just kind of
Yeah.
this consistent checking in? So I think it's a delicate balance, but I don't feel like anybody should feel like they should be checking in, super regularly, like trust the process. And, if we have questions, we'll follow up, or if you have a question, certainly feel free to reach out.
Thank you. And then we did have a good question come through. What are the benefits, if any, of a first round application versus other rounds?
Yeah. So I'm happy to jump in here first. I think for us, our general guidance is to apply when you believe your application is strongest. So I think if it means that like the next deadline is going to really help you retake the test or prepare more, like that's okay. But I think the earliest deadline that is the strongest application would be our general recommendation. At the beginning, you're going to have the most space available, right? Ultimately.
Yeah.
But if you feel like your candidacy is going to be improved with retaking the test or you need that letter of rec or whatever it might be, like we have multiple deadlines for a reason and intend to have spaces in all those deadlines.
Exactly. And then the only difference for the GSB is the third round, which is our deferred enrollment round, the GSB's deferred enrollment round. If you are not a college senior, it's probably not the best round to use to apply. I think the same goes for the Tuck School of Business, not the best round if you are you know, in the workforce and you're looking to do an MBA program. So if you're out of college, have been working a few years, you want to get an MBA, I would apply in the first two rounds. And just as Jessica said, a strong candidate will stand out in either round.
Jessica, you brought up that generally your applicants have about 5 years of work experience post grad. We did have a question about 0 to 2 years. Would you generally recommend that applicants wait and gain more work experience, or is this another kind of like more subjective decision based on like if they are considering switching industries or if they've demonstrated significant leadership? What does that look like?
I would say generally I would advise more work experience generally, right? But it is
Mhm.
subjective in the sense that like maybe they have really kind of robust internship and they have really impressive initial work experience. There might be circumstances which may move the needle for these folks, but I think if you're applying with very limited work experience, um, I would be cautious about kind of the rest of the application. I think again, we have people, it happens all the time. Like there's a lot of people that have less work experience, but I think it needs to be robust and we need to see kind of really impactful work experience during that time. And the rationale for the why now, right? Because it's not only about what you're going to gain from the program, but are you ready to sort of contribute and engage in those conversations in the classroom? Do you have enough work experience to be like an active student and classmate?
Mhm. Agreed. All of all of it. And
Um,
oftentimes, if someone's really early in their tenure, they may not be able to share enough evidence of their leadership skills to
Mhm.
present a compelling application. So,
Okay, well, we covered so much today. We're coming to the close of the hour. There are more questions, and I will go through and I will answer them. We're also going to send you a poll. So if you would like for me to reach out to you, whether you're in college and want help, building your candidacy through college or with application support, this poll has popped up. Let us know if there's any way that we can support you. I'll ask Amy and Jessica to please give us like their ending notes of advice to send you off today.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say pursue what you're genuinely interested in and curious about. And when you're there, just strive to make a positive impact. Two pretty simple things, but I think that would be the advice I would give someone who is interested in business and know that your perspective will be valuable. Whether it's kind of a traditional standard MBA feeder role or something totally different. Leadership is valued in many, many different ways. So that's my advice.
Thanks, Amy. Jessica?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with what Amy shared. And I think just want to take a moment to applaud all of you for being here and thinking ahead in your process. I think that's the biggest advantage is kind of getting ahead and really thinking about your next few steps in order to get to the MBA. So I think, yeah, take the opportunity now to like do your research, figure out what you want to do and really plan ahead. But yeah, ultimately, I think coming back to Amy's point about kind of impact and passion is really important. As long as it's there, I think it will come through in an application and in your work experience. So best of luck. And yeah, it's an exciting journey you're on. So best of luck, everyone.
Thank you all so much for joining us. Here's my contact information. Like I said, if you want any support thinking through that narrative, thinking through strategy, how to best present yourself, we are happy to support you here at GuideWell and with ESM Prep. Thank you again so much to Jessica and Amy for their time today, and for all of your wealth of knowledge and expertise. So thank you all so much. Please feel free to reach out if we did not get to your questions today, and have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.